You can access your audio settings and test your audio when you are already in the meeting. At the bottom left-hand corner of the Zoom, you'll find either headphones or microphone. You can join, mute, unmute, and connect to your computer audio or dial in. Once you're connected, just make sure you're mute so we don't hear any background noise. And again, as a reminder, within 72 hours of the webinar, we will we will send out the deck of this webinar and recording, so you guys can go back and check it out or share with any colleagues. A few of the learning objectives for this webinar today are to review the evolution of the cannabis industry, discuss the impact on market trends, on reporting and tech, identify the roadmap and importance of robust reporting, determine how to use data and analytics for forecasting with greater velocity and accuracy. And with that, I'd like to talk about our awesome presenters today. So first we have Todd. He's a manager solution architect at Armanino here. He's a former CFO with accounting and IT degrees. He has 20 years of technology experience and deep cannabis technology experience. Parnia here is a director business outsourced services at Armanino. She has a CPA of 20 years and has been a CFO controller consultant. Her experience is in technology, real estate, and cannabis. And the most recent past 5 years, she's really been focused on cannabis companies. And Brianna, she unfortunately, she had a family emergency this morning, so she won't be able to join us, but we do have her slides still on the webinar and Todd will go over them. She runs our FP&A solutions team here at Armanino. So with that, I'd like to hand it back over to Parnia to kick us off with the webinar.
Hello, everyone. Welcome to the webinar. I would like to talk to you about Armanino, what we are. We're the largest, actually, we're the 19th largest CPA firm in the nation. We're nationally spread, and what drives us, what's the cornerstone of us, is the fact the purpose that we have is to be the most innovative and entrepreneurial firm and to make a positive impact on the lives of our clients and people in community. What we do have is a large cannabis expertise. We're actually one of the only national firms who have taken the initiative to name cannabis as one of our industry areas that we're going to be focusing on. And we're growing, as I mentioned, very quickly. And below you can see some of our accolades. I'm particularly proud of us being a B corporation. So let's talk about the challenges of the cannabis industries. Cannabis, obviously, industry is a nascent industry, and therefore it's the wild, wild west, and best practices are still being developed. Because of that, the software landscape is very fragmented and makes it very challenging for cannabis companies to really decide what is the best tech stack that they should have in order to stay compliant, because it's such a highly regulated industry. And most importantly, because of the fact that it's a Schedule I and they do not have access to the regular capital market and banking, they have to manage their data and cash particularly. Keeping track of the cash and the inventory becomes one of the areas that most cannabis companies struggle with, because of the fact that, again, the best practices are still being set up, and not having something as simple as a bank statement to be able to go back to and look at to see what has been the monthly transactions. On the inventory side, the challenges that comes across with the different verticals are the growers. They have to have a flower calendar. They have to be able to measure the yields and the biomass, because that, of course, feeds into the next level, which are the distributors and the manufacturers, which there's a lot of cost accounting involved. And trying to keep track of those becomes, again, a challenge, because the data is coming in and making sure that you were able to really account for the cost of the goods that you're manufacturing, and as well as all the waste that came across being such an organic and live product. The retailers, they have their own challenges, having a high volume of inventory, trying to track it. And most importantly, most of the cannabis states now require the companies to be connected to what's called a metric, which is reporting exactly how many units of cannabis you are moving from one to the next level. Every movement has to be measured and reported upon. So you can imagine with all of these data that are coming in and the regulation, what chaos it could have for any company. The financial reporting is the next area that is very challenging. Obviously, if you don't have good data in, your financial insight into the company might not be what you're not really looking at a good snapshot of where your business is at. And more importantly, given the fact that this is a very regulated industry, audits, whether it comes from the IRS side or the state side, or whether it's just through your investors and people who have equity in the company that wanted to know what the status is of the financials and how reliable they are, becomes even more important. And of course, last but not least, that Todd Bree we're going to be talking about is about forecasting, which this becomes really the roadmap of where you're going and how you're going to be getting there, which becomes, again, another pillar of success for cannabis companies. And with that, I'm going to pass it along to Todd, who's going to be talking more about the technology side of it and the tech stack.
Thank you, Barnia. Yes, today I'm coming from inside. I'm coming to you from inside my computer, as you can see. I am the tech guy. So tech stack review, quickly kind of going over the various organizations that Parnia talked about. Number one being dispensaries. They typically have a point of sale solution. There are numerous point of sale solutions on the market today, and they pretty much act like other point of sale solutions that you might see in any other retailer or a restaurant, even for that matter. They usually come bundled with hardware, which includes a register, scanner, printer. And then in the case of dispensaries, they usually include a scale as well, because oftentimes they're selling weighted material. And then, of course, that feeds into the point of sale software itself, which, again, if you've seen anyone taking your order in a restaurant or something like that, it's basically just a touch screen menu system that you're selecting items on. And then those point of sale solutions come bundled with an inventory management solution. And Parnia talked about that, how important that is. And really, this helps them manage that inventory a lot. She also talked about the regulatory compliance. So that is a big difference between the point of sale solutions for cannabis dispensaries versus other retail stores, like I mentioned, is the regulatory compliance. So they have to have integrations directly into either Metric or BioTrack, depending upon the state. Could be both. So that's dispensaries, and that's kind of their tech stack there. The growers, manufacturers, and distributors, they all pretty much use kind of the same system, which I would say is more or less a cannabis-specific ERP, or you might think of it as a manufacturing solution. And these include functionality like task management, again, inventory management. And in terms of inventory management, well, let's go back to task management. In terms of task management, from a growing perspective, it might be, hey, you need to go fertilize, or you need to, go trim, or whatever it might be along the growing and cultivating aspect of the business. In a manufacturing situation, it might be, it's now time to, move these out of the work area and put them into the oven, for example. Maybe we're making brownies, who knows? And then you've got that inventory management is also tracking not only the original raw material, so that could come from the grower, for example, because it could start out as flour. But there's other raw materials that go into things edibles, things like edibles, for example, gummies or the brownies I mentioned, cookies, whatever those might be. But there's other things that they manufacture as well, things like shatter, concentrates, and the like. And so that inventory management is tracking not only the cannabis raw material, which is very, very important. And again, dropping down to the bottom point here as well, regulatory complaints, right? They have to track literally if it moves from this tray over to this tray, it might be in the same room, but metric, BioTrack, they have to know about it. So that is a big difference between this, the cannabis specific manufacturing systems and kind of your run-of-the-mill manufacturing systems, if you will. And so they're tracking that cannabis and raw material type of inventory, but they're also tracking other things that go into maybe the manufacturing of those goods, like gummies usually have maybe sugar in them, or if you're doing baked goods, they might have flour and standard ingredients, but also packing materials, right? So you're packaging this the finished goods up into various materials like the packages itself might be, if you're manufacturing cartridges, it might be the cartridges themselves, that type of thing. And then a big thing that is, like the biggest cost in any kind of manufacturing business, and the cannabis industry is no exception, is labor. And so these systems, if they're worth their weight at all, they are actually tracking labor costing along with all of your other cost of goods sold, so that you get an accurate cost of goods sold when or cost of manufacturing when in a wholesale distribution. So and then when we're talking about wholesale distribution, that's where we're talking about the invoicing side of the fence. So if you're manufacturing things and then you're invoicing out, you're sending that out to other dispensaries that aren't your own dispensaries, then you're invoicing those for the individual goods. On the purchasing side, of course, you want to have a robust purchasing process where it's going through maybe approvals and things like that. So you can track along the way, like this much is coming in, it's on order, we've received this much, and so on and so forth. And so those manufacturing systems do have invoicing and purchasing capabilities. And then speaking about what Parnia was talking about, cultivation forecasting, a little bit different than the forecasting like from a financial perspective. That might be cash flow forecasting, but cultivation forecasting is important, as well as yield tracking. And then of course we touched upon that regulatory compliance. Now the one thing that isn't listed up here that both of these systems require is a GL system, an accounting system. And so you're going to have an accounting system that is tapping into or integrating into these as well. So if we go to the next slide, we'll talk about how, for example, in a fully integrated, vertically integrated stack, so maybe up to 3 integrations, but let's just separate these out. So that first integration of point of sale system to the accounting system, that also applies for dispensaries only, right? Because if you just got a dispensary, then you're going to have a point of sale system, and then you're going to push journal entries over into your accounting system. And those journal entries are, devaluing or reducing the value of the inventory in the GL. They're increasing your revenue in the GL, and they're increasing your cash, because all that transaction took basically place simultaneously at the point of sale. In the manufacturing side, you're going to have an integration. Most of these manufacturing systems have an integration to an accounting system. And so when we talked about the invoicing, wholesale distribution, maybe line item sales invoices, that's where it's a more robust integration. It's not just a journal entries. It's actually the manufacturing system will push sales invoices into the order entry piece of the accounting system, so that you're creating those line itemed sales invoices, which then in good accounting systems, those, when you post that sales invoice, those systems will automatically, without human intervention, post an accounts receivable invoice, so that you then have something to receive the cash against. receive that cash. And then in the good integrated systems, you know, the operations folks that are in those other manufacturing systems, they want to see that, you know, these things have been paid. So that'll push over in there. Likewise, on the purchasing side of the fence, typically you'll create a purchase order in the manufacturing system, which then pushes that over into the accounting system. That's important because accountants want to know, hey, these 7 POs haven't been received against, or, you know, there hasn't been an invoice placed against it. We haven't received an invoice from the vendor. So we need to, you know, take into account from an accrual standpoint. So that's why we want to push those transactions into the accounting system. Likewise, when we receive the goods in the manufacturing system, that's going to push over a purchase order receiver. And then the accounting folks, they will get the vendor invoice. That's going to, they'll put that into the accounting system. And then that, then they'll cut the payment from the accounting system to pay that invoice. And then that, like we talked about on the order entry side, on the purchasing side, that payment will be pushed over into the manufacturing system so that the operations folks can then see that that has been paid. And then when we get into a fully vertically integrated organization, which means not only do they have dispensary, but they're also growing and manufacturing their own goods. So once they're done growing it, maybe they send it to the manufacturing facility, they turn it into concentrate or edibles, and then they want to push that inventory out of the manufacturing system's inventory management system and into the dispensary, the dispensary's point of sales integration, or excuse me, inventory management system. And so there's going to be an integration between the manufacturing system and a point of sales solution that's simply just pushing the inventory over there and making it available at the local dispensaries. And once that's done, then it just becomes that top integration again, because now they sell it from the point of sale dispensary, from the point of sale system, and that pushes into the accounting system from a journal entry transactional standpoint. All righty. And then the technology stack, you can read these names as well as I can. Today we're going to talk a little bit more, and I'm going to show you a little bit about Solver, which is a corporate performance management solution. But I also talked about the accounting solution. So Sage Intacct is quickly becoming kind of the go-to, but you've also got things like Microsoft Dynamics 365, especially when you get into enterprise level types of things. On the manufacturing side, you might have something like a Cannabis. If you're talking about a point of sale solution, you might have something like Dutchie. Work is a payroll solution that is specifically made for the cannabis industry, and other solutions. There's that all of these things, and as you might be gleaning at this point, there are a few, I can think of 3 off the top of my head, solutions that have everything all in one, what we would call a full seed to sales solution. However, my professional experience with those solutions are that they have a weakness. So they're great at POS, point of sale, but their manufacturing stinks, or they're great at manufacturing, but they don't do really well in the point of sale. Almost all of them don't do very well in the accounting and the FP&A. So if we go to the next area there, from an FP&A standpoint, especially if you're using spreadsheets, you're going to run into issues with, where you're manually loading data into those spreadsheets. You've got manual spreadsheets, different versions, which version is the latest version. You've got formula issues that are very pervasive when you're using manual spreadsheets for budgeting, planning, forecasting, and the like. They're great for building models because they're very fluid because, well, it's Excel. But when some formula breaks, and sometimes you don't even know it's broken, it throws all your numbers off, which can be quite heart-aching in the end, and leave quite a dent in the cash flow of the organization. So in a modern cloud-based budgeting forecast solution like Solver, and very important, data integration. One of the great things about Solver is it's got a full data warehouse. And so we can integrate that to all of these solutions that you saw listed on that page previously. So if you've got an accounting system, if you've got a point of sale system, if you've got a manufacturing system, and even if you've got payroll, you want to bring all that data into a single source of truth, into a single data warehouse. And then you can do really cool things from a budgeting, planning, and forecasting perspective. And you can also leverage that for reporting purposes as well. So that dynamic forecasting and modeling. Yeah, feel free, Tracy, to move to the next piece. So that corporate performance management tool, what it does for you is all of that I've just described. Forecasting, budgeting, planning, usually quite robust reporting, typically owned by the finance folks, but it's great for disseminating information out to the organization, all the way to executive sponsors, all the way down the line. It's also great for getting input from others to contribute into that budgeting, planning, and forecasting process. It's really good for quick what-if analysis and scenario planning. This is super important in the cannabis industry for two reasons. One is it's really important to monitor your cash flow, especially if you're in the startup phase and that type of thing, and even if you're going into like IPO and that sort of stuff. But also, to Parnia's point, this is really a burgeoning industry, and there are still a lot of fluid changes, especially given the fact that it's still on the federal level, a Schedule I listed drug. So all the states are kind of doing their own little thing. In the state, you might need metric reporting. Over here, you need BioTrack and so on and so forth. So because it's so fluid and different tax laws come out and different banking laws come out, almost on a daily basis, it's really important to have a very simple way to fluidly analyze your cash flow going forward. So that's super important as well. Okay, so enough about that. What are we talking about here? So I will share my screen here for you, and we'll take a quick look at Solver, which is an example of an FP&A tool. It is cloud-based. This is based on Azure SQL Server, that data warehouse that I was talking about. We can bring in all sorts of disparate data sources, and then we can do really cool things like have different input templates. Here's just a couple of examples of maybe forecasting my labor. Again, our biggest cost, right, in manufacturing, cultivation, et cetera. So here I'm forecasting by employee, right? And it's across the months. And you can see I can have very cool charts and graphs in here. This is an input form. So once I put in my data, I can hit the save data. That is saving down to my data warehouse, which then makes the data available to other input templates as well as reporting. So another example of that might be forecasting production by plant. This also, if you're a retailer, forecasting sales by different, instead of production by grape ape, blue dream, green crack, et cetera, maybe you're forecasting sales by that. But here you can see I've got my facilities broken out and different graphical information here, and I'm putting in some information here to kind of see, here's my current fiscal year actuals, here's what I think is coming up for the current or the upcoming quarter, and how that's playing out moving forward. And then in a true FP&A solution, you've got things like this where you've got a workflow where you've assigned these workflows out and you can track where they are. So these different budgets, where they are in the process. So I've got things that are not started, in progress, or waiting for approval, et cetera. And you've got an approval process in there. And then what that leads us to ultimately is some great reporting. So Solver has this cool concept called a playlist. Maybe you're going in to a management meeting and you're wanting to go over the profit and loss. Also notice I can right click on here and drill down to my detail, but I've got different conditional formatting, stoplights, red, green, yellow, things like that. And then I've got these different reports that I can hop to down below here, and you can choose which reports you want to bundle together here. So here's an example of open orders. So now talking more on the sales side, on the wholesale distribution type of thing. So here I can see broken out by my different items, quantity on hand, available customer orders, my backlog, things like that. Here's an example of a work order management, really drawing my attention to the areas that need my attention. Pass release here. Why is that? It's because I'm short. Well, when are we getting these things in? These I can see that I've got some work in progress going on, et cetera, but I do see the status is okay. And then moving into things like the edibles materials variance, broken out by materials here and broken out by facility, right? So I can see my standard cost, actual, my price variance, my quantity, the variance thereof. Yield variance, very important. This is kind of a cool report because it's not only showing my actuals and my standard and my variance here and my cost per kilo, my yield loss, but it's showing me by facility. So here's facility 100, and then notice down here on my different tabs, I've broken it out by my different facilities. And same thing about my direct labor here. So again, I got my different facilities down here showing my direct labor with my utilization and things like that. So I just wanted to show you a really quick example of what that looked like. I'm going to drop the Zoom back to you, Tracy, and see if there are any questions.
Thanks, Todd. That was very informational. Love it. So we did have one question, and we're kind of close to time, so we can answer that. Question was, do you have other clients offering cannabis-focused HR PR solution providers such as Evolve HCM?
Yeah, we have a real, I mean, pretty much we have a real gambit of clients. So it depends on what stage a client is in, right? Because oftentimes you'll have a smaller organization that is maybe a startup, right? And they've got a very few employees and they're leveraging a certain tech stack. And then they move into a more, like as they grow, more mature model. We have other organizations, quite frankly, a big thing coming into the market now is private equity firms and family offices. These are people that have a lot of money. They already have a lot of businesses established, and they're looking for the next big investment to make more money, quite frankly. And so they are now getting in heavily into cannabis, and they usually just start off really big. Like they buy up a bunch of small organizations maybe, or they just grow, build their, grow their own. They just build their own right off the bat. And those ones will move into those larger things like Evolve HCM, but we see a smattering of those across the entire thing. Parnia, you have a lot of clients that you work with. Do you see that as well?
Absolutely, because given the landscape since last year with all those mergers and acquisition, exactly, Todd, you were on that, given that a lot of these large organization or big cannabis organization, they just want to move in and grab all the smaller ones strategically based on geolocation states as they're growing. We will be seeing more and more of that. And yes, and we do work with larger organization who would need Evolve.
Awesome. Well, I think that concludes our webinar. Thank you everyone for joining. Again, we'll send out this presentation for you to send out, and you can reach out to us here for Todd and Parnia or at our experts inbox. We hope you guys have a great day.
Thank you, everyone.
Take care.
Thank you.